Hello, 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 beautiful people. I am excited to be back with you because I only do this because I still enjoy it. I only have the opportunity to come on the platform and do something that I really love, which I feel so fortunate that that's my life, that I get to do things that I enjoy on a consistent basis. And not to mention, I'm going to get to do them with people that I'm inspired by and I value the work with. So, I mean, today I'm on 10. So, welcome back to the Triumph Together Challenge. If you have been with us for the last 6 weeks, you know that we have been in challenge mode, and it has been such a rich discussion and experience for me to have the opportunity to be here with all of my co-authors. You guys know I always bring my hard copy with me, and she's getting worn in now. We got some stains because I was reading on the beach, the Triumph in the Trenches anthology, Navigating Success for Black Professionals. And I always bring my hard copy with me because I'm still taking notes in the margin. I'm still highlighting. I'm still learning things as I go through this experience. So hopefully lots of you are having that same kind of moment where you're not only having your own parallels where you're like, oh man, I'm not the only one who's navigating some of these things, but I'm also taking away insights and gems that I can apply to my own professional life. So if that is you, you are in the right place. And I'm going to make sure that everyone knows that you can still join the challenge. So first, you can absolutely still join the challenge. And it's 3 very easy steps to join us. 1, you have to be following me on LinkedIn. Simple, easy peasy. You can also follow me on YouTube. So either of those places, if you're following me on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can join the challenge. The second thing is you have to purchase a copy of the book, The Triumph in the Trenches anthology, and it is available for distribution. Actually, the ebook version is also going to be available starting the first week in June. So you can join via the ebook portion, but we would love for you to grab your hard copy so you can jump in with us this week. And then the third one is you have to join the Career Gems newsletter. If you join that newsletter, you will get a curated list of amazing topics related to your career and related to navigating success. Generally, it comes to you every month directly into your inbox. You don't have to go anywhere or do anything. We've done the work for you. So you do those 3 things, and then you are a part of the Triumph Together Challenge. And for those who are in the challenge and contributing a part of the conversation, I'm going to choose one of our challenge participants to come and join me on LinkedIn Live and on the Career Gems for the Journey podcast to give their perspective on the challenge and what they learned and what their takeaways are from the book. So it's an opportunity for me to have a great dialogue with some of the folks who participated in the challenge. And I'm really, really looking forward to that. And I'm excited for what's to come. So it's never too late. Each one of the chapters are individual chapters based from an expert in their field, a Black professional. And you can join us at any point in time. And I love that. That's my favorite part about the challenge. People have come in every week, and some people can be there for week 2 through 5, and then they couldn't be here for 6. And I'm still getting such great feedback. So excited for that. If you're joining me live, either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, please drop your city in the chat. I love to know who's with me live. And I also love to know who is listening on the replay. So drop us a comment if you're listening on the replay, or if you heard something that was really impactful for you. I want to make sure that we know who this content is reaching, because we think that there's a community opportunity that is going to come from participating in this challenge and from reading this book. So we want to be able to fully benefit from that. So I got all the housekeeping out of the way. You guys know that I love to run fast once my housekeeping is done, and my team is not going to send me any nasty grams for not doing my part. But today I'm even more excited because the doctors are in the house today. And I'm going to say this before they come on stage, because we were talking offline, right, in the green room experience, just about not just the book, but we were talking about other things in life. And I love the multidimensional experience that I get to have with my co-authors, right? Because we are professionals, we are experts, subject matter experts, we are in STEM, we are in public health, we are in healthcare, we're in all of these different places, but we're also people with full personalities, and we are not a monolith. So I love being able to bring Dr. Nicole D. Vick to the stage and Dr. Natasha Anderson to the stage. We are really excited to have you both. Welcome. Do you guys just want to say hi? And I'm going to shout out just one line from each of your bios, because it's too long for me to be able to get into it too far. So Dr. Vick, do you want to just say hi? And then Natasha, say hi and we can get right into it.
Hello, hello, everyone. So happy to be here again because me and Leah go way back.
We do. Dr. Natasha, you want to just say hi?
Hi, what up, good people?
So, what we have before us in Dr. Vic and Dr. Natasha are 20 plus years of expertise in public health for Dr. Vic and in STEM for Dr. Anderson and education for Dr. Anderson. Like, listen, like, my mother would be able to smile and say, like, Mama, I made it. Like, the doctors are in the house. The doctors have come to join me live. Not one, but two Black women who have their doctorate degrees in fields that are absolutely necessary to have representation of Black women in. So I'm just excited to bring you guys on. Not only are you all of the things, but you're also my co-authors. So you also contributed a chapter to the Triumph in the Trenches anthology. Dr. Vic, yours is chapter 13, and Dr. Tasha, yours is chapter 14. And I'm just going to jump right in because I learned a lot from both of you in your chapters. First, I'm going to start with Dr. Vic because I don't have a background in public health or healthcare in any way, shape, or form, but my little sister does. So I like to think like, oh, I'm by proximity, I know a little bit more, but you came with some fire in public health and brought some perspective. And I know you were working on your dissertation during the time. So I think it was a rich chapter that was written. But the first one that I wanted to quote for you was psychological safety is directly linked to engagement and disengagement, creativity and commitment in behaviors at work. So just talk to me a little bit about why you wanted to include a discussion on psychological safety in your chapter, because your chapter is called "The Call is Coming from Inside of the House." So the call is coming from inside of the house, and then you jumped right into psychological safety. So just give me a little bit of background on why that was important to be included in your chapter.
I think, honestly, a lot of the conversations that we have about anything that's important to us come from personal experience, where we have been in a space where something has happened to us. We might not have known what to call it. Might not have known what to name it, but we know something happened and it was very real and it was hurtful. And so that's why I focused on psychological safety because I was in a situation where I was psychologically unsafe. And again, I didn't have the vocab. I was like, well, it's this thing, and I know there has to be a phrase for it. And then when I found it, I'm like, that is it. And psychological safety literally is, am I able to show up to work as my full self? Do I have to code switch? Do I have to straighten my hair? Can I make mistakes? If I push back, what happens to me? And so I noticed that in some of these workspaces, and specifically for people that work in public service, we don't really have those kinds of conversations. And one of the things I'll say is because I feel like there is this sort of expectation that when you work in public service, you're supposed to be, I can't even think of the word, but you're just supposed to kind of take it. You're supposed to deal with it. You're supposed to, put yourself out there to be martyred in a sense. And so I feel like we haven't had these kinds of conversations in this specific type of work at all.
So I love that you said you didn't have the language initially, right? And then when you found it, it was so important. And Dr. Natasha, I'd love to hear your perspective because I think what this book has done for me and doing this challenge has also made me feel like I know that people are dealing with these things in the workplace and they may not have the language, they may not understand, and they also may feel alone in their experience because oftentimes inside of your organization, you don't have a safe space to be able to have these kinds of conversations. So I love that you included the language and that we're giving people tools to not only be able to identify that there's a challenge in their workplace, but then to speak to it to themselves, to their therapist, hopefully, because therapy is dope, but also just to make sure that they're able to communicate what's happening inside of them to the people that are close to them. So Dr. Natasha, do you have an additional perspective or something you were add on the psychological safety realm that kind of bridges into your own chapter?
I actually read Nicole's chapter, Dr. Big's chapter, and almost came to tears because I saw myself in her chapter so much on two different levels. Because as you said, I am an engineer, but I'm also a teacher. And both are public service careers. They're looked at two totally different ways, right? On two, on the other ends of the spectrum, right? So we look at teachers as, like they go out there, they teach our kids, and they kind of are looked at. They really are looked at as martyrs for real. Like, they give up so much, and people, are sort of like these, okay, all of those things. And then there's the engineers who are, kind of sort of these upper echelon kind of, but we are public servants, right? We work for other people for the good of others, right? And people don't necessarily view that work that way, but when you're in it, that's what we're doing, right?
And
And
can I
so
add one thing, Dr. Tasha? Because I love that you said that all of it is public service, but I think teachers especially, and I just wanted to like put a pin in that. I think teachers and social workers especially are doing,
absolutely,
phenomenal work, like literally molding the next
absolutely.
generation, and deserve to be treated as the creme de la creme in our society. It's not that way, and that's my I have a problem with it.
Absolutely.
So
It's like the triangle, or what is it? The pyramid is upside down or backwards or whatever, however that phrase
it's
is, right?
wrong. It's wrong.
It's wrong. Yes, it's wrong. It's backwards, upside down, flipped up, whatever we're gonna call it. It's wrong. And either way it goes, the people who work in it feel it. And so the psychological safety, that word rang so loud in my mind because it's so true. And having been in both worlds, I was like, yes, I felt unsafe, both places. I felt unsafe. My voice couldn't be heard in both places. I felt like I couldn't be wrong in both places.
Mm.
I couldn't be wrong. I always felt like, as an engineer, I felt like I remember saying to someone, I didn't want my name to be on plans because I didn't want to be responsible, because that meant if these plans went wrong, that meant I was responsible for somebody's life.
Yeah.
I didn't want my name to be on plans.
Is that the discussion that we're missing kind of in mainstream discussions about career broadly and success? Is, as we think about, first, I'd like to give our listeners two things. One, if you're trying to evaluate if you're psychologically safe in an environment, what kind of like questions should you be asking yourself, right? So like ponder that for a minute. And then my second question is, if are employers even having the right discussion around what does it take to create retention in employment, or to create an environment that is conducive to Black and Brown people being able to be successful? Are they even having the right discussion as what are the investments, or what are the corrections, what are the systems? So start, Dr. Vic, I can already see earrings swinging, head nodding. So I want to start with you. If you're trying to evaluate, am I in a psychologically safe environment? What kind of questions would you suggest our listeners start to think about and ask themselves to figure out what is working for them, or if the environment is no longer serving them?
Sure. So there's a book that I referenced in my dissertation. Dr. Timothy Clark wrote about the 4 types of psychological safety. I can't remember all of them right now, but one of them is inclusion safety. One is contributor safety. And so it's stuff like, when in this workspace, as I'm coming into this workspace, am I allowed to be my full self? Is my work valued? And am I valued as being the person that created that value? What happens when I make a mistake? That's actually a really big one. What happens if I make a mistake? Am I literally like thrown out the building, or, am I shamed? Or is this supervisor, this person that says, it's okay, how do we move forward? And so those are the types of things that you would really want to think about, and ask yourself if these things are happening. Do I have to code switch? And I mean, I think a lot of us as Black people code switch automatically. But what happens if you come in and you just talk like you talk at home? The people look at you funny. What happens if you come in one day with braids? What do people say to you? Oh my gosh, what's going on? What happens? You got to really pay attention to those things. And the other thing I will say on top of the questions is, most of us immediately know, we feel it, It may not have a name for it, but we're like, somebody is playing in my face. And so that I think is something that we kind of just sort of it comes into us and we're like, something's wrong. But otherwise,
Intuitively.
yes.
Intuitively, we know something is misaligned. We may not have the words for it, but our intuition, our nervous system is telling us something. And I think some of us have been deconditioned from listening to our nervous system and listening to those voices because, you know, we've been conditioned to show up and to be resilient and to override some of those voices. So, so thank you for that, Dr. Vic. So, Dr. Tasha, what do you have anything that you want to add to that, or do you have something specifically around employers? Right, as a CEO, you run a company and you support other companies. What should employers be thinking about when we think about creating psychological safe environments? Let's give them some work, some homework to go and do.
Well, thank you for that. Part of my job is to make sure that companies know that, as well, two things. One is that I teach women of color that you never lie to you. That's one of the things I tell women all the time. Your inner knower doesn't lie.
Mm-hmm. I like
And
that. You don't lie to you. Your intuition will never lie to you.
Right. I call it your inner knower, right?
Okay.
And we have learned to sort of ignore it, right? It doesn't, like, I know this thing, I'm feeling antsy about it, but like, no, we'll do that in a minute. Just I'll throw it to the side. No, listen to that girl. Something is not right.
Right.
That is you talking to you. That is a signal. That means you need to get still, figure it out. Something's not right somewhere. And you need to figure out where the thing is not right. Something needs to be addressed. Something needs to be made right or whole. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's not, you don't need to throw out the whole thing. Maybe you just, something needs to be addressed. Something needs to be made right. Now, maybe it is that it's time to go, right? Maybe that's what it is, right? But maybe not. It's up to you to figure it out. Your inner knower never lies.
Okay. I love that. I love that.
That's
if you're advising a company, say we're talking about Fortune 500 organization comes to you and says, Dr. Tasha, we realize we have a problem. And we think that there's something that we can do and we're willing to invest in order to retain our Black and brown leaders. What advice would you give them to start with first as you think about creating a psychologically safe workplace? So Dr. Vic said, can the people come in and be their whole selves? Do they have to code switch? So what I often kind of feel the tug for, as I just, frame up this question for you is, sometimes I don't know that every environment deserves all of the versions of me. So there's some things that is not a code switch. I intentionally hold back because the parts of myself that I believe are the most precious, I want to save those for people who are deserving of them. So it's a push and pull, right? Do I want to be my full self at work? No, because y'all don't deserve all that. You don't need to know my position on the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, even though it's very clear that I'm
no, but you do deserve a safe space, right? Every single person needs to be able to walk into a space and feel safe.
Okay.
Right. Yes. Whether you show up there as your full whole self, whether you want to wear purple makeup and wear braids, right? And feel like if I walk into it with purple makeup and braids on a Friday and I wear, whatever it is, and that be okay.
Okay.
Or I want to wear regular, with my hair pressed and red, whatever it is. I need to know that is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know where I think that comes? I think that comes at the manager level. I think where the work would, if I was advising a Fortune 500 company, is to invest in awareness of bias at a manager level, at a frontline manager
past
level.
Awareness. Now we're in implementation.
We do the word.
Awareness is still needed, right? Okay, let's. Because awareness is always needed because we're still dealing with stereotypes. We're still dealing with old knowledge of what people assume we should be doing and saying and acting, right? So yes, awareness, but it's awareness plus implementation, right?
Yes.
And
And
processes.
emotional intelligence. So I think it's those three.
Right.
Awareness, implementation, emotional intelligence.
And there's
frontline
the
manager,
checks
right?
and balances of it, because
Okay.
people will put processes in place and then they'll just assume that things are being done. And there's no checks and balances to see that it's actually being done, and that how well is it working. So
Yeah.
it's like we'll put a process in place and then there's no checks, right? So it's like what's happening after 3 months? What's happening after 6 months? Where are we in a year? They don't do that. They're like, oh, well, we put a process in place that we're all good.
Right.
So
No,
that's a good, very, very controlled recommendation. Are you doing a 3-month, 6-month, 1-year check-in with your employees to understand what their experience is as you think about a new hire? So I love that. That's a tangible action that they can take.
Then there's the work after that, because once you've done that after a year, then you've got to say, okay, what did we learn? And then how do we after what we've learned, when we've gone through the debrief, okay, here's what we've learned. Now, how do we re-implement this based off of what we've learned now?
Okay. So, okay, I love that. Dr. Vic, were you going to add something there?
Yeah, I was going to say, so in my research, I found that supervisors actually hold considerable power over the psychological safety of their employees, considerable. They can make or break. And what I did find in my findings was that, there were some Black supervisors that were helpful. There were some Black supervisors that were harmful. There were some non-Black supervisors that were really helpful, and there were some that were harmful. But there were some really key things that these supervisors can do to make a difference. Being open, being present, how they deal with errors. So I keep going back to that, but I think it's important because, if you are working under a manager or a supervisor that if you make a mistake, you might as well quit. That's not going to make you feel safe. That's going to stifle innovation in your organization. So it really does start and end in a lot of ways with that supervisor and that manager. If they are not equipped to create that open environment, you might as well hang it up, because they're the ones that are going to make the difference. And I know there's this saying that goes around, people don't quit jobs, they quit supervisors. And it's true. Like if you have a supervisor that is literally stepping on people's necks, you will never have the retention that you desire. You'll wonder, like, dang, I'm training all these people. They come here and they leave after a couple years. What's going on? It's your supervisors. So even in the public sector, in the private, I imagine, we got to really do a better job at training our supervisors to be open. I think people think that supervisors know better and have a certain level of understanding, but in the reality, especially in public service, you become a supervisor. Oh, you just been here. And oh yeah, now you're a supervisor now. But have you been trained? Do you have skill sets? I mean, it's not just about the knowledge of the work, it's about how to manage people and get the work done. So just wanted to add that in, that I also saw that in my research, that the supervisor, baby.
So you're absolutely right. And it's actually a big part of the business that I do as a professional services company is there are people who have gotten promoted into manager ranks often because they were great individual performers, but have never been equipped with the tools, soft skills to lead people or to navigate the nuance of managing people and identifying the needs of a team and then course correcting, right? And then doing that with a level of empathy and care so that they don't damage people as they're navigating them through the organization. But to your point, not only will you not see innovation, your people won't grow and no new leaders will emerge as a result of not having strong leaders that have that capacity. So I love that you called that out. I love, Dr. Natasha, that you told them, check in 3-6 months, a year, follow up, actually implement the feedback that you get post debrief. But I also hear you saying, Dr. Vic, make sure that before you put people in a management role or at a supervisor role, because they do have so much influence directly over the workforce, that you have to make sure that they're equipped, they're emotionally intelligent enough to not do damage to other people in the organization. That's kind of the foundation of psychological safety. So I think.
And can we be clear that every one of us have bias, right?
Oh, sure.
And then that goes back to the emotional intelligence. But like, I think we have to. This is going to be a weird statement in a way. I think we
Okay.
can bias can almost. I want to say bias can be managed, but I don't know if that's actually true. In a way, when you know it's there, it's almost like you
Right.
need to make sure that people are aware of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when that is acknowledged, it's really helpful, right? So it's sometimes when people are made aware, oh, okay, I have this bias. I have this bias here.
Yeah,
It's
I think
really very helpful for people.
you're
Absolutely.
right, and I like that Dr. Vic called out there are managers and supervisors of all races and all demographics, and there's no definitive knowing, right, as you join an organization or as you are reporting to a particular type of person, individual, what their bias is or what their level of desire to see you be successful in the organization is. So I think it's also really important as I think about giving coaching advice to early career professionals or mid-career professionals is sometimes it's not the organization that needs to go. It's that you can't be on that leader's team. There's a disconnect that's so clear there, and you're not going to win with that leader. They're not going to be able to find a way to support you because their bias, is showing. So it's not so much that you need to leave the entire organization, but is there another team that you could also think about? Because there's a way to stay and keep your tenure, keep your benefits, keep the things that are important to you, but not necessarily work for that leader if it's possible. So you guys both had, we're not going to get into the deepness of each chapter. Dr. Tasha, your chapter title is Even With My Mouth Closed, I Still Speak. And I'm looking to the side because, I got my hard copy here. I have all my notes still. I have all my notes here. Yes, you too, Dr. Tasha. So I have all my notes here on the screen, but I still have to look at my hard copy. So you guys brought in so many rich stories and kind of case studies in some respects, Dr. Vic, for what you shared that I think can represent different sectors. And I know your specialty is public health, and Dr. Tasha, your specialty is around STEM and education careers. So just between those two areas, and my background is corporate. So I love that there was this, no matter where you are in industry, there was something in the book for you and something in each of your chapters. So I love to just encourage people to say, even if you're thinking, well, I don't do exactly what they do, the context can be applied to your specific experience. There are gems that you can absolutely extract and apply to your life. But tell me the most important thing for each of you. What are you thinking that you want people to really take away from your chapter, right? This was a labor of self-discovery, I think, for me as I wrote my chapter. There were so many things and stories and examples that I was like, man, I haven't thought about that in such a long time. And, how do I process that in the writing experience? So I had some things that I really thought were important for folks to take away from my chapter. I would love to hear from you first, Dr. Vic. What was the most important thing that you would say you want people to take away after they've read your chapter?
I think honestly that we need to be paying attention to the public health workforce across the country. Come on, we just came out of a pandemic where that work was at the forefront, where everybody was on the front lines working until just exhaustion, but that there is still some aspects of our workforce that are suffering. So even though we all come in with this passion, we want to help people, we want to change the world, that some of us are being harmed in our workspaces. And that's where that whole idea of the call is coming from inside the house. It's like we're supposed to be this social justice forward-facing institution, but we still have some of the same pervasive problems that other workplaces have, despite us being a social justice. We're supposed to know better. And we don't. We still are harming people. And I will say the last thing, the Black public health workforce is so skilled and so ready to do this work. There has been literature that says that they are more likely to say, "I put me in the front to do the work on social justice and health equity," but then you don't pay us well. You keep us down. So I just want people to understand that we need to be paying attention to this workforce in general because of the kind of work and how important it is, but that there's some aspects of this workforce that are being actively harmed, and we need to do something about it.
Okay. So thank you. I love that. I love that as your key takeaway. Dr. Tasha, I need to hear your key takeaway because then we have to venture with the little bit of time we have left into discussions around pay equity and compensation. And that's something I'm really personally passionate about. Dr. Vic mentioned it, and Dr. Tasha, I know you mentioned it in your chapter, but give me your key takeaway, and then let's talk just a little bit about some pay equity. Let's delve into why that's so important and how we want to lend our voice to that critical topic.
Ooh, that's such a okay. So key takeaways from my chapter is I think the power of presence, right? I really want people to know that you have to show up, right? And I guess the reason why I named my chapter, even with my mouth closed, I still speak, is because your presence matters, right? So even if you never speak, for me anyway, me being in the spaces that I was in mattered. I'm a Black woman engineer. There's still the numbers are still low enough for me being in spaces and saying, hey, I'm a Black woman engineer, me being in spaces, people look and are like, wow, you do exist, right? Me being in spaces matter, right?
Same,
So
same. I think we covered this the last time we were together. I'm a Black
right.
woman engineer also. And yes, there needs to be more discussion about people not only in the space, but there also needs to be more support and protection, right? For those people
Correct.
who choose to venture into
It's
these.
like Black male teachers.
Mm-hmm.
They matter. When they show up spaces, they matter,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's so few of them. The Black male nurses, they show up places, they matter. Your presence matters. And so when you are in spaces, you don't have to open your mouth. It's people need to see you. You matter. You do exist. A girlfriend of mine likes to call me, she's like, she's my unicorn. And while sometimes I'm like, I am not a unicorn, I do exist, but I get what she means because
Yeah.
there's so few of us, people don't see us. And so they think I I can't aspire to be that because they don't see us. And
Right.
so that's why I'm so focused on telling my story and getting my story out there and being a face that people can see, not so, like people want to see me. No, so that that you can be me, right? And
Yeah.
not me per se, but a Black woman engineer.
I
My
love
presence
that.
matter.
I love that. And not only we said at the very beginning, the doctors are here. Before coming into this experience, doctor connecting with co-authors, there is always this desire to be able to put up more examples of people who have gotten to the highest level in education because that's their choice. And I also think that these kinds of discussions help people to understand that it's not based on your degrees, it's not based on what sector you're in. We're seeing these challenges and these themes across industries and across sectors, and you're not alone. And that was the most important part of this challenge, right? Was to triumph together challenge, because we're not alone, and we need to hear that to remind us if we're going to dig down and dig into our resilience in order to show up more in these spaces. We need to know that we're not alone. But let's just talk about pay equity for a minute. Let's talk about compensation. How I have a couple angles that I want to take, but I think we only have enough time to talk about one angle.
Sure.
I really want to have more conversations as Black women about compensation. It's something that I think many of us are struggling with behind the scenes, and we are undercompensated in a lot of areas. And it doesn't feel like it's an area for us to discuss because it's uncomfortable for any variety of reasons. It's taboo, it's frowned upon, or there might be some shame tied to it, right? How did I end up here and in this situation? So, talk to me just about how you personally feel compelled to drive the discussion around pay equity. I'll start with you, Dr. Vic, and then bring you in, Dr. Natasha. I have some really strong POV on it, so I'll close us out on pay equity.
Sure. So I think from a public health perspective, I mean, economic opportunity, access to resources is important. So just from a across the board, overarching public health perspective, it's really important that people are paid what they are worth. And then kind of digging down a little bit into sort of my research, that came up. Pay disparities came up. Like, I'm one of five managers and I'm the lowest paid one, or they promised me a raise and then they took it back. And so we saw a lot of that. And I think that goes back to this whole idea about workplace and psychological safety. Well, how come I'm getting paid less for doing the same amount of work as someone else? And some of those things really kind of create situations where people are not, they don't feel safe, they don't feel valued. That contributor safety becomes an issue. They don't feel valued. I'm one of them people, don't give me no more certificates, don't give me no more awards. Can you just add some dollars to the paycheck, please? The other thing I'll say, and then I'll be quiet too, is this. I think it also plays into this whole myth of meritocracy, right? Especially for Black folk, we feel like, well, we worked hard, and we often do work hard and harder than our counterparts. We got all the degrees, and for whatever reason, that money the math ain't mathing, and it's just really unfortunate, unfair, and can really have some huge impacts on us when we think about, again, from that public health perspective. If my money ain't right, what access to resources do I have? How does that impact my family's well-being and my well-being through the course of my life? So I can look at this thing from like about 2-3 different angles.
So thank you for that, because I think what we're navigating often as Black women and as contributors financially to our household is pay inequity doesn't stop at us. It stops. It's so deep into not only our immediate family, but the family that is our non-nuclear family, and our chosen family. So I love that you brought that up. Dr. Natasha, you talked about specifically pay inequity in the STEM field in your chapter. So I know you got something to be able to add to this. Love to hear your perspective.
Well, of course, I have an opinion. We were paid less, of course, in STEM fields. I think it's like 71 cents on the dollar for even in STEM fields, we're still paid less. I think I read someplace recently that of course, we know that women are, even when we go to apply for a job, we have to meet all of the qualifications before we'll even apply for a job. Okay, well, here's the, I won't even call them the issues, but here's the playing field, right? When we know a man can look at the qualifications and only meet two of them, he's applying for this job. Mm-hmm. And there are all sorts of other issues that are surrounding this pay gap issues that are bigger than us, right? And then sometimes it's around how the job description is written, and it's like, so there's some other things that go into play. But if we're talking about the money, one, we need to ask for what we want, and we need to not be afraid to do that. We also need to be willing to walk away. That's the other thing that we don't do. We're not willing to walk away. I think I read a stat the other day that said that employers know that if they don't give us the raise, that we'll stay. Let that sink in for a minute.
So you guys have kind of gotten into the core tenets of where I have spent a good majority of my time as a business owner focusing on compensation, negotiation, compensation strategies directly for my clients, because I think I spent a long time making a lot of money for companies, negotiating on their behalf, multi-million-dollar deals. I used to have a joke that I could spend, $23 million in a day before lunch, because companies are spending money. They're making these kinds of investments. However, we don't have the perspective that there is money there. So we're left in a place of, well, if I ask, what kind of backlash happens if I ask for appropriate compensation? And will I still be likable if I make this, a thing in my organization? But what I really wanted to encourage folks to think about is being more transparent in your own personal circle about money, about compensation, building a network of people who you trust, who you have confidence in, whether it's your work bestie or whether it's somebody who doesn't work in your organization but works in your industry, to talk about compensation and money. Oftentimes we don't talk about it until we're right at the point where we need to mention an offer. And then we're like, well, I don't even know what the numbers are. I haven't done my research, or that number feels so big. How could I say it? When you've done your research and you've practiced and you've had these kinds of conversations, you're more apt to actually ask for what it is you deserve. And then take it a step further. I think Dr. Natasha's point about being able to walk away. Dr. Michelle, who I used to do a lot of collaborations with on Clubhouse, would talk about your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So there are some core negotiation principles that I think more of us need to learn. And listen, negotiation is not going to solve pay equity. Let's be real clear, right? Negotiation is not going to solve for it, but so many of us aren't even asking or aren't even broaching the conversation because we don't have the language, or we don't have the data, the statistics, or the support to help, with someone like me supporting them to navigate a full negotiation in a credible way that is driven by respect and driven by market value. But now let's give organizations a little bit of homework as we close out. Organizations know for a fact where the pay equity and pay disparities are, right? We're not going to pretend that there isn't significant data out there. If you want to create a psychologically safe environment for employees, bring it full circle, compensation is a very clear way to start from a value proposition so that your individuals know that they're being paid market value. You don't have to exceed market value if that's not your goal, but we know that there are examples that happens too. So as an organization, you want to create a psychologically safe work environment. You want to retain people. I think the core of it starts at your managers being solid managers, as we talked about earlier, but also, are you compensating people appropriately that gives them the benefit of desiring to stay and deciding, is this organization a great fit for them? Without those two things, without appropriate compensation and psychological safety, I think there's companies that are just going to fall to the wayside because you're not even talking about a table stakes discussion where I'm hearing, my counterparts who are white men leading in not only not being fully qualified for the role, but also asking for more money than the role might have been even available for. So I think part of it has to be, we are equipped with the talent, with the skills, with the competencies, with the confidence to approach negotiation as a whole, but also organizations have to do their part. And I think the steps that some states are taking around pay transparency on roles as they're posted is a great first step. And I want to see that be a universal policy where let's not waste each other's time, right? Like, don't have me go through a 5-part interview process just for you to then come back and say, we're only paying, 2/3 of what you would be asking for. No.
Right.
So that's my feedback to organizations. But for us, I want us to be talking about money more frequently. I want us to be talking about compensation, bonus, incentives. Maybe it's even non-monetary compensation, because there are other things, whether it's paying for graduate school, whether it's relocation bonuses, whether it's a parking space. Like, there are lots of ways to acknowledge compensation that can be tied back. And I think some of us are not getting the opportunity to have the right discussions in a mutually respectful environment with our employers or potential employers. So that's my hot take on it. As you guys can tell, I'm pretty passionate about this. And when I wrote the book, I wrote a book on salary negotiation years ago. It transformed my perspective personally, but I didn't realize how few of us had ever participated in negotiations that were higher stakes, that gave us the confidence to navigate them. And that's why I'm so passionate about, now I'm committed to helping 10,000 women learn how to negotiate for better compensation. Because if you have the skill and you do your part, then the organization, if they don't show up, we know what our next step is. So we know what we need. So it's been great having you guys both. I really, really, really am so excited to have co-authors who are just dope humans. And I enjoy it. Tell me, Dr. Tasha, where can our listeners find you or connect with you if they want to know more about your business and the work that you do? And as soon as she's done, Dr. Vic, do the same. Let us know where we can find you and connect with you.
Okay, well, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's the first place and probably the best place to find me these days. So you can look for Dr. Tasha or Natasha Anderson. Natasha is spelled Natosha. That's the way my mama spells it. Uh-huh. So I know people. I know, but that's the way my mama spelled it.
Okay,
Okay.
mama.
So and then you can go to my website at drtasha.co and you can learn all about me and you can learn all about my services. And I look forward to talking with you guys at any point and any
Yay.
Go ahead, Dr. Vic. Where can we find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn too. And it's funny because I used to think LinkedIn, I'm like, what? But LinkedIn is actually kind of a cool place to be. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there, but I also have a website, www.nicoledvic.com. You got to put that D in there, nicoledvic.com. So you can see my podcast. You can see the books are there for sale, and a whole host of other things. So yeah.
Yes. So thank you. I love calling Black women doctor. Like it makes my day. So thank you for giving me a chance to say Dr. Vic and Dr. Tasha as many times as possible today. Two Black women who are very accomplished, very talented, very capable, and also a part of my co-author community through this anthology. So thank you so much for being with us for the Triumph Together Challenge. And we will talk to you all soon. Thank you guys for riding with us live. And if you're listening on the replay, I love that for me. And I also love it for you. And we'll talk to you soon.